Have you ever wondered about getting a great climate-friendly gift? Well, then you'll really enjoy today's conversation, together with Siobhan, Laura and Tessaria from Thanks a Ton. They will share with us how a climate pun at a hackathon led them to starting Thanks a Ton.
We did a climate hackathon, and I don't think we solved anything about carbon market, but we did meet each other, and I consider that a win. And in meeting each other, Kara had this kind of offhanded joke on Slack one day that she was thanking somebody for an interview and said, "Oh, thanks a ton," and then jokingly said, "Oh, I just made like a carbon dioxide pun because we measure carbon dioxide in tons typically." And she said we should start a company where we gift that as a thank you to people. And we all just kind of chuckled and went on with the day. But then later, Laura and I were perhaps wise or foolish enough to say, "Hey, Laura, what if we actually did that?" And so we built Thanks a Ton about 2.5 years ago.
Why they are using carbon removal instead of carbon offsetting providers.
We're not just doing like 100-year time scale removal here. These methods are very, very durable. So when they're sequestering this underground, it's not going anywhere for thousands of years. It's not going to get re-emitted into the atmosphere. And that's so important in this fast versus slow carbon cycle.
And why you should consider using carbon removal gift cards instead of regular ones.
So we hope that when people receive a card, like, "Oh, somebody sent me, 50 kilograms of carbon removal. What is that?" And so the hope is that they then get curious and learn about it.
So our cards also include a certificate of authenticity, so you can see what credit you've received, how much of it, and where it is in process.
Hello and welcome to the Impactful Ninja Show. I'm your host, Dennis Kamprad, and today we are joined by Siobhan, Laura and Tessaria. Welcome to you all.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi,
thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for joining as well. It's quite interesting. It's the first time that we're having an episode with 3 guests.
Yeah, we're the founding team, and we have a really kind of flat structure, and we do most things together.
That's perfect. I love that. Now, before we going into how you're working and doing things together as well, let's give our viewers an overview. What is Thanks a Ton and what are you doing there?
Yeah, so Thanks a Ton is climate-friendly gifting for the 21st century. We do digital greeting cards that remove CO2 from the atmosphere. So all of our solutions that we sponsor are high-quality CO2 removal. We're not doing offsets. We don't even really believe in the idea of offsetting. We want this to be a gift for people. We don't want people to feel guilty about like, "Oh, your carbon footprint." So we're really focused on the high-quality stuff that actually turns it into like rocks and fun stuff like that. I have a few props I'll be showing throughout the video today.
Sweet. So basically, if I want to gift someone carbon removal and want to have like a really climate-friendly gift, especially for the holiday season now, your option would be amazing because it's a card that they can physically receive, but then they also know like the CO2 is stored in concrete and rocks or any other formation.
Yes, so the card's digital, but I guess you do physically receive it in your email inbox. We have yet to create physical cards. One day we'll get there.
Sweet. Now let's rewind the story a little bit back. What did you do before starting a Thanks a Ton? What is your backstory?
Yeah, I think we all have distinct backstories, pretty unique. And Tessaria joined us about, a year and a half ago, Tessaria?
January.
But Laura and I have been working with another co-founder, Dr. Cara Maisano, out of Paris, who is no longer with us, but was a terrific co-founder. And this idea came out of, basically, it was a climate hackathon. We did a climate hackathon on carbon markets. And I don't think we solved anything about carbon markets. They are incredibly complex and broken in many ways. But we did meet each other, and I consider that a win. And in meeting each other, Kara had this kind of offhanded joke on Slack one day that she was thanking somebody for an interview and said, "Oh, thanks a ton," and then jokingly said, "Oh, I just made like a carbon dioxide pun because we measure carbon dioxide in tons typically." And she said we should start a company where we gift that as a thank you to people. And we all just kind of chuckled and went on with the day. But then later, Laura and I were perhaps wise or foolish enough to say, "Hey, Laura, what if we actually did that?" Or, hey, Kara, what if we actually did that? And so we built Thanks a Ton about 2.5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Did you have any experience with carbon offsetting or working in the climate action industry beforehand as well? Or was it just based on the joke and then, yep, let's do something good for the environment?
Well, I should say, Dennis, my background is real estate. So I've come a long way. At the beginning of the pandemic, like many people around the world, I lost my job. But I was already thinking that I wanted to switch careers to work in climate. So I took the opportunity and found my way to Air Miners and Open Air and Kara and Siobhan, and then coming together, just bringing everything that we all needed from our backgrounds to form a company. That's how we got Thanks a Ton off the ground. And then as Kara departed, we were so lucky to have Tessaria join us. Tessaria brings huge skill set that we badly need and has really helped to propel us where we are now.
Sweet. Let's change over to you, Tessaria, then. How was it for you? What did you do beforehand, and how was the joining?
So I did a lot of things before I got involved in climate. I guess the biggest, most personal reason is a dream that I had 6 years ago that really woke me up to climate change. But then more recently, I got my master's in climate from Columbia University in the city of New York. And then after sort of taking a year off, doing like a very easy delivery job, I really wanted to break into the carbon dioxide removal industry because it's my calling. My name, Tessaria, means to harvest air. So I view all the work that I do in this field as a calling. So, yeah.
Nice. And now if we start from the beginning of the journey, so basically you met at a hackathon, you had like the off-joke idea of like, oh, thanks a ton. It's like, wow, that's a climate pun. Then you started, what was your concrete first step? How did you get it started from a pun into making it something real?
That's where the rubber meets the road for sure. So Kara and I both have climate and science backgrounds. And so we kind of were able to quickly evaluate, what do we want people to know about carbon dioxide removal? What are the most quality projects we can work with? And I think we saw people's lack of awareness as a big hurdle to the industry growing. So we need to really build up this carbon dioxide removal industry. But most people don't really have a clue what it is. So if you'll allow me, I'll just take 2 minutes to kind of break down for your listeners what carbon removal even is. So we all have heard of planting trees, right? That's the most commonly understood carbon removal method. You plant a tree, the tree photosynthesizes as it grows and takes carbon dioxide out of the air. Planting trees is wonderful, and we need to plant lots of trees and restore habitats and restore this wonderful natural ecosystems that we've destroyed. Unfortunately, we have burned so many fossil fuels since the start of the Industrial Revolution that the parts per million, the amount of carbon dioxide molecules there are in the atmosphere, has just gotten so astronomically high that planting trees alone will not be enough for us to reverse the damage caused. So what we have to do now is we have to deeply decarbonize. And so that means things like decarbonization category is switching to solar energy. It's, riding a bike instead of driving a car. It's these things that get fossil fuels out of our daily lives. So that's incredibly important, and that can't be overstated. What we do is kind of on the cleanup side of that, right? So we're not focused on stopping the emissions. We're focused on the emissions that are already up there. How do we get those molecules out of the atmosphere and then store them away safely where they can't cause climate change? So that's really what we do. And so we partner with companies that are actually doing the carbon removal themselves. So there's a host of really terrific companies, and Tessaria, I'm sure, can walk you through some of them, that actually do the work of removing. And what we do is we say, okay, there are these really cool companies out there. Individual people aren't really interacting with them. They don't really know what they're doing. How can we get individual people to participate in this act of carbon dioxide removal? And how can they learn about it and be curious about it? And we really wanted to spark curiosity and joy and humor. That's kind of our approach. Tessaria, do you want to talk about some of our incredible partners that actually do the removal?
Yeah. Dennis, we can talk for quite a bit about our partners and the methods.
I could imagine, yeah.
How does that sound?
Yeah. Before going into the partners, let's take one step back as well and say, start with how were you able to find and connect with the partners as well? And then let's jump into your partners as well.
Yeah, I think that was because we all met, well, especially Laura and Kara and I all met through a professional networking organization for people in climate who are focused on carbon dioxide removal. So for my master's degree, I measured carbon fluxes and got really excited about carbon dioxide and carbon removal. And so I joined this community called Air Miners. And through there, I met Kara and Laura. That's where we did the hackathon. So by virtue of I've always been in the environmental field, I did my undergrad in environmental science, I did my master's, and then worked doing environmental compliance, biology, and monitoring for years. So I've always kind of been in this space. And then through this network, we were able to connect with a lot of the actual projects. They're all small startups. There's no massive scale carbon dioxide removal right now. And so we all kind of know each other. And there's some really wonderful, very trustworthy companies out there that are trying to scale up, but right now they're still at the small scale and they need lots of support and awareness to reach what we call gigaton scale, which is billions of tons, which is what we need to remove from the atmosphere.
Okay, sweet. So basically through the mutual connections, where you also did the hackathon, you were also able to get into contact with partners that are also at the startup stage. And now, sorry for interrupting you, Tessaria. Let's share a little bit more about your partners and their work.
Yeah, sure. This is going to take a little time, but this is the crux of what we do. This is the most important part. So let's get into it. Charm Industrial, I think we'll start with them. They're a group of smart, integrity-rich Bay Area engineers on a mission to get atmospheric carbon concentrations down to 280 ppm. So what they do is they take bio-oil. They basically take waste material and pyrolyze it, which is it's a fancy way of saying burning without oxygen. Another product of pyrolysis is biochar, which we'll get to in a second. But a byproduct of the biochar process, if you do it a certain way, can be bio-oil. And so basically what they're doing is taking plant matter and turning it into oil and injecting it into old oil wells. So it's like they're putting oil back underground. How cool is that? What I'm holding in my hand is actually blackstrap molasses, but this is basically what it looks like. This is for demonstration purposes. So that's bio-oil. That's Charm Industrial. Next up, we have Carboculture. Carboculture does biochar. This is what biochar looks like. It's kind of hard to, there we go. That's kind of good. So biochar it's the same process as bio-oil, except you do it a little differently. And it turns into this pure inert carbon. I mean, this is just pure carbon here. So when you pyrolyze plant material, it turns into this just pure carbon, and you can use that to filter water. You can use that to put into your soil and make little condos for bacteria and fungus, as they say. You can even add biochar to concrete or asphalt or use it in any type of construction. So lots of really cool uses for biochar. And this stuff is stable. I think I forgot to mention that with the bio-oil too. We're not just doing like 100-year time scale removal here. These methods are very, very durable. So when they're sequestering this bio-oil underground, it's not going anywhere for thousands of years. It's not going to get re-emitted into the atmosphere. And that's so important in this fast versus slow carbon cycle. So same thing with biochar. Very, very durable solution up to beyond 1,000 years. Another method is mineralization. So what I'm holding here is calcite. This is calcium carbonate. Basically, as CO2 reacts with certain rocks like basalt or olivine, it turns into this mineralized carbonate, calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate. And maybe Siobhan can talk a little more about that, but that's the basic idea with mineralization. Our mineralization partner, we have two. There's concrete mineralization, and then there's enhanced rock weathering. So enhanced rock weathering and concrete mineralization work the same way. If you go on our website, we list them as two different methods, because with concrete mineralization, you're actually injecting CO2 into the concrete and storing it that way. With enhanced rock weathering, you're actually crushing up these basalt rocks or wollastonite. There's lots of different rocks that do it. Basalt's the most common, BASALT, basalt. And that will mineralize the CO2 sort of as it's spread on farmland, on beaches, etc.
What all of these methods also have in common is that when you take out the CO2 from the air, you get something tangible that you could put in your hand.
Yes.
Or that you could, like, you have some liquid that you could put in the glass. So you know that's the CO2 that got sucked out of the air, and that's how you store it.
Yes, exactly. People don't realize that with the cards, and maybe that's something we can do a better job of, is showing people, the actual carbon that's being taken out. But yeah, everything has a real world basis here. Seaweed sinking. So our partner with seaweed sinking is Seaweed Generation. Basically what they do is they're taking invasive seaweeds off the coast of the Caribbean right now. It's an invasive seaweed species called sargassum. And the reason sargassum exists is because of all this agricultural runoff that's been going into the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf. And so it's been causing these blooms, these algal blooms, and supercharging this invasive seaweed. So what they're doing is removing the seaweed, which is great for the coastal communities that it washes up on the shorelines of, but also helps store carbon deeper into the ocean. So they'll take the seaweed, sink it to the deep ocean, and it'll be stored there for roughly, I think, 400 plus years. So another very durable solution. And then I think that's pretty much it. I guess we have reforestation. Everyone sort of understands that. And soil carbon sequestration, Siobhan, maybe that's one more suited towards you. Yeah, those are our methods. And direct air capture.
Mm-hmm.
And direct air capture, which is maybe you've seen like the images of turbines that suck the air. It's very like high tech, right? And it crosses through a sorbent and the CO2 comes off and it gets stored. It can be either utilized, like Coca-Cola actually is using gas, CO2 gas that's been typically captured from a point source, right? From like a factory. And this is captured from the ambient air, just the air we breathe. And that can either be used or, even better, it can be injected underground and stored, and it can react underground with basaltic rocks often and whatnot. And yes, it is a very tangible process for those that are actually doing this work. And I think a big challenge we have as an industry, and us as Thanks a Ton, is taking this process that's happening where you can't really see it and then making you understand it so that when you are paying for this basically environmental service as a gift, you can kind of understand, but this machine sucked it out and then they injected it underground and now there's that much less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And for things like bio-oil and things like sinking seaweed, you're relying on the plants to do the photosynthesis, right? So that's where the removal is happening. But if you don't pyrolyze some, walnut shells that are just being wasted, right? The walnut tree photosynthesizes, it stores carbon within its shell. We pick the shells to get the walnuts out, and then the shells are just left, to biodegrade. When they biodegrade, they re-release that carbon to the atmosphere. And so carbon removal is kind of intervening and saying, okay, well, carbon's been removed by the plant. We're going to lock it away for thousands of years. That's really important because I think a lot of people don't understand that fossil fuels come from ancient geologic timescales, right? Fossil fuels that we've burned, you can't just plant a tree and expect it to be the equivalent of a fossil fuel emission. Because when you plant a tree, yes, the tree grows and it's super important. It has all sorts of co-benefits. But that tree is going to last, 100 years? It's going to fall over and die and decay, and that carbon will be re-released to the atmosphere. And so we think a lot about how can we get people to understand this need for removing carbon in an equal 1-to-1 ratio with the emission source. And again, we don't offset, and so we're not making you count your carbon footprint or anything like that. But we do think it's important holistically for people to understand that this is really taking that carbon out of the air for thousands of years.
It sounds like a super interesting challenge from the messaging perspective as well. Because we've done a lot of research as well on different, carbon offsetting, carbon sequestration, direct carbon capture, carbon removal, and then where you put it into soil, into anything basically. And one of the things that we've seen there is that there's not a big understanding yet how all of these are different. Because for some of the consumers, I just want to offset like a ton of CO2, and all of these do the same without really knowing what's behind. That's one of the things. And the next thing is, how additional are they? How effective are they? And what is the time scale? And when you speak about something like sucking carbon out of the air, it happens immediately. You put it into some kind of formation. It's gone for 1,000 years. It can't be any more additional, plus also, durable and effective. How has that been a challenge or not so far from you from the communication of the benefits on the one hand side, but then also saying instead of instead of planting trees, which is much cheaper, but much less secure, these methods are a little more effective, but then they also cost more.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. That is a huge job that we're trying to do. We're trying to loop people into this understanding. And again, we're all for planting trees.
Yep.
We think those are quality carbon credits. And also, I think it's important to know that while the really permanent solutions are critical and we need to scale those, it's also really important just to get carbon out of the atmosphere right now, because people are having their homes flooded right now. People are dying from climate change right now. And so the benefit of something like regenerative agriculture that stores carbon in soils, but not for that long, or the benefit of planting trees, which stores carbon in the biomass of the trees, but not for that long, are still really important and really valuable. And we really argue that there is no silver bullet. There is no one solution that's going to save us, right? We need to plant the trees and do direct air capture and make biochar and inject bio-oil and sink the seaweed. It all has to happen in concert. And so that's something that I think we do struggle teaching people. And also, to your point, we're at the very beginning of this kind of high-tech carbon removal industry, right? And so I think a lot of people, to your point, say, well, wait a minute, if I can buy a ton of carbon for $10, why would I spend $600? That doesn't make sense. You know, a ton is a ton is a ton. Well, no, like the tons are all different. Yes, it's a ton of carbon, but they have a different climate impact. And so, yeah, teaching people about that. And again, teaching sounds even kind of pejorative. We just want to spark curiosity. We want people to be like, ooh, why is this $600? And why is this one $20? And what is the difference? And then they can come to our site and learn. So when you get a card, you send somebody a card, they open it in their mail, it pops up very similar to like a paperless post, if you've ever used that service or something, where there's kind of like this digital image that flips open and there's the message and the artwork that you get to choose. And then we have links that say, learn more, and what is this? And so we hope that when people receive a card, like, oh, somebody sent me, 50 kilograms of seaweed sinking carbon removal. What is that? And so the hope is that they then get curious and learn about it.
Dennis, our cards also include a certificate of authenticity. So you can see what credit you've received, how much of it, and where it is in process.
Nice. So would I also be able then to click on a link and get all this information also to see like, okay, this card includes these carbon credits from this organization, and I can see, for example, it's seaweeds of the Caribbean.
Yes, you can.
Beautiful. Yeah. Next thing for you, Laura, it sounds like mixing construction plus carbon removal to build some CO2 on negative buildings as well, no?
Well, we'll see. I hope so. I don't know if my career will ever take me back into real estate. That's yet to be seen. But it was my career in real estate that sparked my interest in carbon removal, because working on these big shopping center developments and seeing the giant cement trucks or concrete trucks just queued up, waiting to come and pour their concrete and build a huge structure, made me realize the impact of concrete alone on climate change. It represents 8% of the total global emissions. So it has a huge carbon footprint, and it can be fixed with various products. There are various ways to go about it, but with captured CO2, for instance, which is what Carbon Cure is going to do now. They are teaming up with Heirloom, who just opened the first direct air capture plant in the United States. We're so excited about that. Now, concrete can be a carbon removal product instead of just carbon storage. We need both. We need storage. If we're going to have removal, we need storage. But now we can make the concrete work for us, work for the climate.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see how all the technologies evolve and how we can see like, well, what we've done so far, has a big impact on greenhouse gas emissions. Maybe that can help remove those as well and reduce them a little bit. Yeah. Also connected to what you said before, Siobhan, about the different kind of effectiveness of all these programs. I'm always thinking like some kind of industry standard would be amazing when you see like, okay, this type of offset has so much effective removal. This type of offset so much that you can compare it and that you don't always see like, oh, this ton costs so much, this can cost so much more or less, and have like a really nice point in comparing them. Let's take a...
Yeah, there are a number of organizations working on that. Nobody's there yet, but that is the dream, to kind of have a standard body that we can really measure and understand these kind of heterogeneous carbon credits.
Yeah. That'd be beautiful, especially if you have like one unified measure for that everyone uses and knows. Let's take a jump back as well to Thanks-a-thon. From your starting point and partnering with these great organizations, how have you developed? Well,
in the beginning, we built a custom website.
Where are we now?
Well, in the beginning, we built a custom website, and it gave us enough feedback to realize that we wanted to take the next step. So Siobhan and I did a lot of user interviews and research, and we decided to build a new shop on Shopify because it had a lot of functionality we needed, such as a shopping cart. Building that in a custom website is complex, it's expensive, but Shopify can do that. So we have a great partner, Pogadan, who has developed an app for us so that we can work on Shopify. And we launched that new website about a year ago.
Nice. So now everything is automatically connected from buying a cart to getting the offsets, everything.
Yes.
And sending it out.
Yes.
Nice. And now looking ahead as well, what's your plan for the future? What is upcoming with Thanks-a-ton?
So two things that I think we've talked about a little bit are getting seed paper cards going. I know some people in Brooklyn who collect wildflower seeds, and people really want to hold a physical card. Carbon removal is a physical thing, but when we're sending digital cards, sometimes that can get lost. So we're thinking about bridging to the real world. We've also thought about doing like QR codes. And then something else in our pipeline, maybe this is a little further out, but working with smaller projects. It's been pretty easy to connect with sort of smaller projects through our partner patches, how we get all of our credits through the back end with their API. But yeah, even just like focused on smaller community projects that are removing CO2 and aren't able to generate credits because it's so like out there. So yeah, those are my two ideas that we've talked about. What about y'all?
Well, we've recently added some new functionality so that now our customers can go in and buy our cards in bulk. Having a shopping cart, you can buy individual cards and keep adding them to the cart. But if you had one card that you wanted to send to 10 people to say thank them for their participation in a project or a holiday message, you can also now order those cards as well. That adds a lot of functionality for our customers and improves the customer experience. We've also added the ability to put in hyperlinks in the messages. So if you wanted to add a hyperlink for a newsletter or an online gift or some other message, now you can do that as well.
I could also ask, like being on the receiving end, wouldn't it be really nice to receive a card? Like, let's say someone removed 1 ton of CO2 and I received a card that actually stores the amount of CO2, maybe not a ton, but just some amount as a symbolic kind of gift. Would probably be super challenging to do. But it would be like a fun thing to think about from the customer's perspective.
Well,
maybe we can put some bio oil on the cards, on the physical cards.
Well, and we've talked about the physical cards since the beginning. On the one hand, we understand that people want to receive a physical card. They'd like to have that and hold it and read it. But the carbon footprint of creating that card, manufacturing it, shipping it, selling it, buying it, mailing it, it's a daunting carbon footprint for a greeting card. Yeah. Whereas an email has a carbon footprint on average of 4 grams. So that's why we keep saying we need to keep them digital, but we do love the idea of like the seed card paper and coming up with some physical solutions.
It also sounds like a perfect transition now to how can we find you? How can we support you? How can we get some Christmas gifts from you guys?
Yeah, you can check us out on thanksaton.earth. We're not .com. Maybe one day we'll have that domain. But on social media, we're also thanksaton.earth. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is where we're really looking for big, like bulk B2B, business customers, corporate people who are thinking about carbon footprint and want to send holiday gifts. Yeah, that thing that covers everything.
We'll put the links in the show notes as well, so that people can easily find you as well. Now, let's make a slight transition. Let's have a look into how did Thanks-a-ton, how did the work that you were doing there impact your personal life? Has anything changed based on your work there?
That's a really good question. First of all, it's incredibly rewarding to work on climate. I think everybody who probably comes on your show and talks about working on climate, we all love doing that. I can't imagine ever not working on climate.
Yes.
Once you're in it, you're hooked. But I was kind of already in a climate background. I've always worked on environmental projects and whatnot. So I think something that was really exciting was doing a startup. This was my first startup, Tessaria, and Laura's first startup, Kara's first startup, going through making lots of first-time mistakes. But we have such a supportive community, not just air miners, but the work on climate community. Or we did Terra.do, which if you're familiar is like an educational website. And we did their kind of mini accelerator program about a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe now. And we won that and they supported us a little bit financially. And so that's been hugely supportive. I think it's been really fun. I'm a mom of 3. And so it's also incredibly challenging to find the time and space to work on this in addition to the other job I have. So I've, I think since the birth of my 3rd child, Laura and Tessaria have really stepped up, which has been wonderful. And I think it's great to work with people that you really get along with. I hear so many stories, even in climate, where it's a very friendly friendly community, I hear so many stories about people breaking up with their co-founders, or it doesn't work out with their co-founders, and people who are constantly searching for co-founders, right? Like, I'm imagining some of your listeners are out there thinking, man, I just want that co-founder so I can get this idea off the ground. It's really hard to find. I acknowledge that. And so it's very grateful to find people that we get along with. We're an all-woman and non-binary team, which I also think is pretty unusual in the space. And yeah, we've had a lot of fun so far, but it's a lot of work.
I've been working maybe 30 hours a week on this for the whole year for free. We're all working for free right now. None of us are getting paid. Eventually, we'd like to maybe support ourselves through this, but the important thing is educating people about carbon dioxide removal first and foremost. Yeah, I think my personal life, I'm a lot happier now working for Thanks a Ton than I was a year ago at my delivery job. Frankly, I feel a lot more respected in this space, in this organization, just working on this critical issue. Like, really pumped to be part of Thanks a Ton.
For me, this is a mission. This is what I feel that we need to do for future generations. I feel like I've had the benefit of a stable climate for my life, and we're kind of leaving Earth in a fixer-upper state. My real estate reference again. We're handing it over to future generations as a big fixer-upper, and it's unfair that they're going to have this massive problem to deal with when it was preventable. So really, carbon dioxide removal is only made necessary because we failed to act 40, 50 years ago when we first found out that this was really going to happen. And, the science was solid, but some people just don't believe it. So what can I do now to fix this going forward? And this is my contribution.
Yeah, this is also the part that I really like with kind of in a similar boat there. When it's so strongly aligned with the values and with wanting to create like a positive change, it doesn't really feel like work. Sometimes I'm the happiest, like when it's Sunday evening, it's like, yay, tomorrow is Monday. I can have like a full day of like moving things forward again, which I never had in my previous work life. And also just working on something that has a positive impact and knowing if only I change something, I made a positive impact on myself. And then if I'm able to help other people, enabling other people to make a tiny little change, every single person, collectively, we can make a big change there as well.
Well, and Dennis, I think of it like we are transforming the simple everyday act of sending a greeting card into concrete and impactful climate action. A lot of people tell us they want to take action for climate change, but they don't know what to do. So we're offering kind of an introductory level plan for them to take action for climate with something that they already do. Pairing greeting cards with causes is already known. That's a tried and true formula. We're not reinventing the wheel there. Where we are reinventing the wheel is pairing it with climate action and doing the hard work of figuring out who are the best in class for each of the solutions that we offer and how do we explain to people what it is and educate people. Both the sender and the receiver can be educated about carbon dioxide removal, what it is, why it's necessary, and all through the simple act of sending a card, even at the same price point that you would pay for a card if you went to the store and bought one and sent it. So that's how we think of the greeting card as the delivery method for the carbon removal.
I think that's a beautiful message as well. Instead of just buying a card at the store, contributing to climate change with some carbon emissions, buying it, sending it, why not use the same amount of money to remove some carbon emissions, send it digitally, have a good purpose behind, and then maybe go a little further as well.
Now, each card, if you're spending $5 or $10, each card is going to have a small quantity of carbon removal. But that's where we believe in the power of people to crowdsource the demand. And for individuals, for small and medium-sized companies who may not have the same ability to invest in the expensive carbon removals, working with us, they can turn their communications into carbon removal solutions.
Beautiful. Now, let's already switch to the last part, our final question. If you had one tip to share with our audience on how to become more impactful, what would that one tip be from each of you?
My one tip is to talk to your neighbors. It might sound a little weird from a climate perspective, but I really believe that the future of most things in our world are going to be community-oriented, including carbon removal, and I'd love to see empowered communities through carbon removal. Historically, climate change and pollution have caused harm in our communities, and I think this is a real opportunity for us to take that pollution back out of the sky and say, now we have value that we can hold and share with others. So yeah, talk with your neighbors, share resources, reduce all of our carbon footprints, and remove carbon together.
Mine would be believe in yourself. Believe that one person can make a difference. Everybody coming into this nascent industry of carbon dioxide removal is new to it, and the industry is new. We're building it. When they say we're building the airplane as we're flying it, we really are. And we need people with all backgrounds and all skill sets to work in this industry to get it off the ground and succeed with our mission of carbon removal. So believe in yourself. If you want to work in it, find a way to make the change. It is daunting. Climate science is hard. I'm not a scientist, but people are very understanding about that. They're patient. They're willing to teach if you're willing to learn. So believe in yourself and give it a go.
That was lovely, Laura. I agree with you. I would say that it feels really hard to move the needle on climate change. We talk a lot about personal responsibility versus like major systems change. And actually, we really need both, right? We need people to act responsibly themselves to help provoke system-wide change, right? So I'd say pick one thing in your life that's actionable. And there's 1,000 different lists on like the impact of, eating meat or not flying or riding your bicycle. So I would just pick one. The one that I feel strongly about that isn't maybe talked as much as the other ones is reinvesting your pension or your 401k, whatever it is, away from fossil fuels. That can be hugely impactful. But whatever one works for you, like just pick one and go for it. And like, I think to Tessaria's point, like get a community around it, like do it as a challenge with your neighbors or your school or something. And like really don't be afraid of personal action, even though we all know that yes, we need systems-wide change. Take that step in your own life and lead by example.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing that. Thanks so much for all the work you've been doing with Thanks a Ton as well, Tessaria, Laura, and Siobhan. And well, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. It's been so great speaking with you.
My pleasure.
Before we go, we actually have a discount code for your listeners.
Oh.
If when your listeners want to check out with a card, they can get $5 off by using the code Impactful Ninja.
Yay.
Just all one word. And that'll be $5 off. That code can be used 10 times. So one per customer. So your first 10 listeners can get that code.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that as well. We'll share that as well. Well, so basically for all of you guys listening, use the discount code. Thanks so much for listening as well, and stay impactful.